welcome to Tucson Blockchain channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Bitcoin halving, or halvening as some people will say. It's coming up here pretty soon. 50 days, 20 hours, 40 minutes, and counting down on the seconds. So, what is it? Bitcoin halving is when the block reward is cut in half. So that means essentially, just to really simplify it, it means that half the amount of bitcoins that are released daily, the amount of bitcoins that are released daily are going to be cut in half. And I'll let you read into this a little bit more. I'm just going to talk about essentially why that's important. I mean, it means that that half the money at the current price of Bitcoin needs to go into the market daily to keep the price stable, essentially. So this chart's really interesting. It has the last two halvings marked here, and what you see is a major run up following it, a little bit before, a little bit after, and here's where we're at right now, and why people are getting really excited about this. Now, a lot of people say that the price of Bitcoin, or the price of the halving, has been priced in, and that's an argument that a lot of people have, but it's really hard to tell, because what drives Bitcoin's price is the demand for it and the scarcity of it, and it's inevitably getting more scarce as the inflation rate is cut in half, which will most likely drive the price upwards. But yeah, here's the stats. So, total Bitcoin in circulation around a little bit over 18 million, total ever 21 million. We're at about coming up towards 90% of the total to be mined. So we're getting close. It's only going to get wildly more scarce from here. Current Bitcoin price about $6,300, a little bit less than that on TradingView. But yeah, I mean, here's the part that's kind of interesting is the 1,800 Bitcoin that are generated daily is going to be cut in half to 900, and so it talks about the inflation rate before and after the halving right here. So that's pretty wild when you look at how that's cut in half and how that compares to the way that the US dollar or any other sort of government currency is working. So yeah, there's 144 blocks generated daily, happening every 10 minutes. And you get down into the hash rates, which essentially defines like the difficulty to mine. So if you're looking to get into mining today, it's really not profitable for most individuals to mine unless you don't pay anything for power, and you're not going to be mining blocks on your own with a couple of ant miners or whatever. What that will look like is you'll probably be donating power to a mining pool. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors which will probably drive the price up, after this halving. But some pretty interesting people to look into and listen to. Caitlin Long was on Anthony Pompliano's podcast last week, and she did a really good special talking about the debt bubble that we're in right now. She's a pretty amazing woman, very intelligent, worked at Morgan Stanley for a long time. Now she works on Bitcoin and blockchain legislation. She in Wyoming. She's looking to open up a bank. Yeah, check her out. Follow her on Twitter. She's pretty spectacular. Very smart. And of course, Anthony Pompliano has been killing it recently with his podcasts. Check him out too. His podcast is called The Pomp Podcast, and you can find it wherever podcasts are. And he's on YouTube, so if you like him, subscribe to his YouTube. But Price is moving up today. Uh, I am so stoked at the price of Bitcoin. We might see it go a little bit lower, but I'm not that worried about it. Because here's the thing. A lot of people get worried about price movement in Bitcoin, but what makes Bitcoin amazing is that the network is secure and is going to always be going. I'm helping to keep the network running by running my own node, which is essentially, something that's just validating other people's transactions and creating a stronger, more secure network. The more people that are running a Bitcoin node, the more secure the network is, as it's more distributed, more decentralized, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work or energy to do. You can just, if you have an old laptop or computer, you can just download the Bitcoin Core, which is what I did. It's super, super easy, and all you have to do is just let your computer run periodically or daily, and yeah, there you go. You're working to make a better world. But but that's the interesting thing about Bitcoin is when you look at the traditional finance world, what we're starting to see is that the underlying fundamentals are very, very precarious, and fragile. What they're really fighting to do is keep price stable, to keep stocks at continuing to grow and other assets, keep these awful businesses that are super irresponsible and greedy alive. Whereas in Bitcoin, the network and the fundamentals are really, really strong, and the price movement is less of an issue. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is people talk about the volatility of Bitcoin, but the thing is when things start getting priced into Bitcoin and people really start to decide what the value of it is, the Bitcoin is going to be the stable asset, and the dollar is going to be volatile. So it's just interesting to look at. It's definitely a major paradigm shift that's going to, that I believe personally will be happening. And unfortunately, the circumstances which would lead to something like that happening are pretty awful. Nothing about the situation we're in financially right now is fun. And what we're looking at is the government and the central bank are looking to, instead of let things self-correct, they're looking to potentially kick the can down the road and make the next crash like this even worse. That's what happened in 2008, and that's what's been continuing to happen. Now, if they had at this point, it almost feels like it's too late to let things self-correct. And so when people suggest that today, the majority of people that know anything will look at them as if they're complete morons, because what they see is that, these huge unemployment numbers, like, what we're seeing in the headlines now, potential 30%. That means a third of Americans are going to, working class Americans are going to be out of business or out of work. And that's just crazy to think about. That's people being put out on the streets. That's just, absolutely terrible. Now, it in a lot of ways, it is way too late to do anything different and to go back. From the government standpoint, this is what they have to do. They have to continue bailing things out. They have to keep creating this debt bubble. But the problem with that is it's just inevitably going to fail. The bubble will continue to be popped, and the only solution is to make a bigger bubble. And that's where Bitcoin comes into the picture as being a hedge against that, as being an alternative for individuals like us who aren't necessarily in circumstances where we have excess amounts of wealth to just be throwing into assets, buying up real estate, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a person living in Tucson and you're tired of wealth inequality, one of the best things that you can do is invest in Bitcoin, because what we're seeing right now is whenever these recessions happen and they print money, the people that get absolutely destroyed by it are the people at the bottom, as they're, what they have their wealth based in, which is the dollar, is just being debased. It's losing its value, and things are getting expensive. Who gets hurt at the end of the day? Is it the politicians, or is it the people that are having to take wheelbarrows full of cash to go buy bread? And we know the answer to that. So it's just something to look at. It's what happened after 2008. Wealth inequality has only been on the rise. And so, really the only solution to it that I personally see is to just dump what we have now, and look for something that is better, to limit the government's monopoly over the monetary supply, because they're doing a pretty bad job of managing it. And the more that you learn about money, I think a lot of people might hear me talk and just think I'm some crazy libertarian or something, but the more you learn about money, the more you realize how really bad things are, and how poorly the government is handling these things. And you look at things, you go to the U.S. debt calculator, and it's like there's no plan to pay this off, other than to print money. And the idea is that you just have, the central bank has endless amounts of money to print. There's absolutely no cap on it. And then seeing smaller countries, through history, Germany was a pretty big country, and following World War I, they were just decimated, and their currency was completely worthless. And so to look at, the potential for things like that to happen, and if that happens to us, it'd be terrible for the world, because much of the world relies on the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. It's the currency that backs them. It's what people transact in internationally, a lot of times selling oil, etc. So it would completely disrupt everything, and it'd be very violent and really bad. So rooting for that to fail now isn't the best thing to do. But what Bitcoin allows it for is something that's predictable, something that's decentralized, something that can't be debased, something that can't be shut down. There's no central point of failure for it. It actually is democratic, in the sense of, if you want to make a change in the network, the way it works is people that adopt the change, the more people that adopt the change or refuse to adopt the change, that's what decides which protocol wins out in the end. So essentially the best form of it will win in the long run and stand true, which is cool. Whereas, none of us have a choice what the government does. And then you could talk about voting, but none of us are voting on these policies right now. None of us have control over monetary policy. Both sides are very similar, and they both want a deficit spend. They both don't want to pay off the debt. And they both want as much control as possible. But yeah, so I guess I'm going to sell my company. So what my company is about, Tucson Blockchain, is we're about promoting the adoption of Bitcoin and blockchain in the Tucson area. And I had somebody ask me why they should donate to my company, and I explained this is why things are so bad. When you look at the direct connection between poverty, wealth inequality, and mental health and substance abuse issues, if you really want to do something that's good for a community, it has to start with money. It has to start with giving people an option that brings more equality and stability to them. Now, kind of the options on the table around doing that are generally pushed, politically. It's either you can well, I mean, you can donate money to charities, which do really, really great stuff. Um, they do absolutely amazing stuff. So, you look at charities in town, working with refugees, working with the homeless, working with, addiction, uh, working with women who've been abused by their husbands. You look at all these different things that are really, really incredible. You can give money directly to them. But the common thought process is to give more money to our government, and that's gonna somehow solve the issue, and they're gonna manage the money. But when you when you look at how the government mismanages our money, it's appalling. Um, and they're continuing to make things worse. And so when you have this inflationary monetary policy, it is taking money out of the hands of poor people very, very directly, as they're getting poorer and poorer. And the people who have their money in assets, uh, like real estate, stock, etc., which is not your, unfortunately, is not always your normal everyday person. You're seeing that less and less people can retire with stability, and they have to work to the end of their lives. Um, uh, it's just apparent that the system isn't working for us. Now, where Bitcoin and blockchain comes in is it is the alternative. These currencies that have different monetary policy, that have a max supply, that have scarcity, what it creates is this ability for your money to, gain value over time as it becomes more scarce. And it is completely opposite of the way that the dollar works, where it loses value over time. What the dollar incentivizes is spending, and it incentivizes debt. Whereas what Bitcoin incentivizes is wealth creation. It incentivizes saving, thinking in the long term, and that thought process is what helps people to become healthier. Because if you're looking at decision makings, when you're thinking long term, being challenged to think long term, it is much better for you. You're going to make decisions that are going to set you up for success. Um, and so when you put a better form of money in the hands of people that need it, like in our community here in Tucson, uh, you're really setting them up for success, more so than giving money to uh, the government, who's going to mismanage it and spend money on private jets and all sorts of ludicrous things uh, that don't really matter. They're going to employ tons and tons of people in these agencies that do absolutely nothing. It's pretty frustrating. So, and when I'm trashing the government, I'm not trashing our local city officials, and I'm not trying to trash our state government. What I'm trying to, make apparent is that the federal government, the ones that are controlling our monetary policy, are doing a very, very poor job, and is putting us in a really bad situation. Now, if you get put out of work because of the restrictions that they're putting on, and I'm not going to talk about whether it's right or wrong, but if you get put out of work because of the restrictions that they're putting on businesses and whatever, and their idea is to send you a $1,200 check, and you have no idea when that's coming, how does that cover, for most people, that barely even covers anything? That's not enough to really get you out of the hole. So inevitably, you're having to survive through debt. And so that's the importance of savings, and the dollar directly disincentivizes savings, because when you save your dollars in the bank account for 10 years, it's going to go down in value, because the banks give you a very poor savings rate. And you have to put your money into risky assets like the stock market. And who is happy right now looking at their stock portfolio? So, yeah, there you go. Whereas if you bought Bitcoin 4 years ago, you would be looking great right now when it was hundreds of dollars or $1,000, and the appreciation that it's had over the last 4 years, even if we're down right now. Now, if you bought up at $20,000, it's important to look at, where is Bitcoin going to be years down the line, 4 or 5 years from then. 2022, it still has a lot of room to grow. It's that long-term savings thought process. So, that being said, when you give money to Tucson Blockchain, what you're doing is you're helping to further the adoption of Bitcoin and blockchain here in Tucson, getting this knowledge out to more people, giving me the ability to go and talk to businesses about on-ramping, to be able to take cryptocurrency, giving people really a use case to use it, as well as teaching people about Bitcoin and blockchain and teaching them how to get involved in it, because unfortunately it is kind of a steep learning curve at the moment. It's really not that hard if you have help, but trying to get into it alone is a lot for a lot of people, and it's a completely different way to think about things. So anyways, thanks for stopping by the channel. Hope you have a good one.